Um, Mitzvah Nun Gimel, Aseh, HaMitzvah Sholosh v'Chamishim, Hitch Tzivonu B'Ri'iyah, V'Omo Yis'ale, Sholosh Pom Mashona Yeroe Kol Zchocho Es Pnei Havaya Elokecha. V'Inyi Mitzvah Zo, Shi'ale Odom L'Mikdosh, Im Kol Ben Zocho. Any child, masculine child, any boy that he has, She'iyelo, Shiyuchol Leches V'Gaglov, that's able to walk, he has to go up with those boys to the Mikdosh, V'Yakriv Korban Oila B'Aliyosai. Korban Zeh Sheyakriv B'Aliyosai, Hu Haniko Oilas Riyah. Okay, now there's something amazing happening over here, that there's a mitzvah deraisa to bring a cotton and to bring the cotton also. Even though the cotton's la bar mitzvah, the mitzvah is on the father. And it's a chiddush that the chiyuv of bringing the cotton, the boy, is a chiyuv deraisa. It's part of this mitzvah. The Mishnah Chagiga, Perek Aleph Mishnah Aleph, Hakol Chayim Maria, Chutz Mishei Cheres Shoita V'Cotton. Umi V'chuli Umi She'enu Yochol Lales B'Raglov. Ezel Cotton, Kol She'enu Yochol Lilkov Al Ksefov Shel Oviv, V'Lalois Miyushalayim Lahar Habayis. Divrei Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel Oimrim, Kol She'enu Yochol La'achois Biyodoi Shel Oviv, V'Lalois, the father, he holds his father's hands, V'Lalois Miyushalayim Lahar Habayis. Shenem Masholos Ugolim. Ugolim, it means you walk. And it's the it says Hakol Chayom Berir Chutz Micheir Shoita V'Cotton, and Ezel Cotton Kol She'en Yochol Lilkoiv, or that's Rabbi Shammai Beis Hillel says that he can't walk up holding his father's hands from Yerushalayim to Har Habayis. So L'Cheira, the Ram learns from Kol Zechorcha Sholosh Pom Bashona Yera Kol Zechorcha, that is an obligation to bring all the Zchorim. Kol Zechorcha. So L'Cheira, the Ram is certainly the Reiskes and Bederch Klal. Maybe, we have to evaluate whether he quotes the Rabbans and Sefer HaMitzvos, but at the beginning of the mitzvah, when he's defining the mitzvah, that he certainly wouldn't do. Let's see now. So L'Cheira, just one point. So L'Cheira, the same way the mitzvah's Hagod of Sipur Yitzim Yisraim is to tell the cotton the story, at least part of it. The cotton's certainly not chayiv. You're obligated to tell the cotton. Similarly, over here, the cotton's not chayiv to go from Yerushalayim Lahar Habayis, but the father is obligated to bring him. And that we learn out from Kol Zechorcha, Yeroe Kol Zechorcha. The Ram Perek Beis of Hilchos Chagiga, Halacha Gimel, Kol Cotton Sheyochol La'achois Biyodei Shel Oviv, V'Lalois Miyushalayim Lahar Habayis, Oviv chayiv lahaloisoi ulehirois boy kedei lachanchoi b'mitzvos shenemo yeroe kol zechucha. So you can ask yourself, maybe maybe the Ram means the Rabbanon. But on the other hand, at the end he quotes a pasuk, Shenema Yero Kol Zechucha. In the mitzvahs chinuch, the Rabbanon, l'cheir is the double portion. You don't need to quote a pasuk. One would have concluded, or should conclude, from the Gemara Chagiga that Aliyas HaKotten Lazora is only the Rabbanon, Mishum Chinuch, and the Posik is only an Asmach the Ba'almo. The Gemara Chagiga, Dal Man Aleph, Oma Man, Kol Zchucha, L'Rabbis is a Ketanim. Osna Chutz Mishcher Shoyt V'Kotten, Oma Baye. Or Kasha, Kan B'Kotten Shigil L'Chinuch, Kan B'Kotten Shelo Higil L'Chinuch. Kotten Shigil L'Chinuch, the Rabbanon he. Eino Chinami, Uko Asmach the Ba'almo. It was Mefuish in the Gemara that it's a Rabbanon. What you should say is that the Rambam is of the opinion, not like Abaye, like Rabbi Yosef, that disagrees with Abaye. And he says in Daf Zayin and Aleph, the Gemara quotes from Daf Zayin and Aleph, Ve'ein nirin chatzoin mishum shenema kol zchucha. So what it means is that kol zchuchim chatzoin means that kol zchucha is kol ktanim and chayom lo is midaraisa. Gedolim themselves are chayiv, and the riboy of kol zchucha is for ktanim. However, if you look at the Gemara, according to Rabbi Yosef, the Av is chayiv lahavi is kol bonov b'yoyim echad. So what it means is that the chiyuv shel Av of the father to come with kol bonov with his sons, it means that without his sons, he's not Mekayim Mitzvahs Riyah. That's what he's saying, not the Chatzayim. If this is Mishum Chinuch, see, if this is Pshat and Posik, the Yeo calls Chuch, you have to come all together. So we understand that it's a deraisa. But if it's Shum Chinuch, that the Chinuch should be all the children together, the doesn't make much sense. They have to come on the same day. On the other hand, so the Hodos Einu Lechatzoyin, but the Ram doesn't quote, very strange. The Ram doesn't quote the halacha of Ein Nir Lechatzoyin in Mishnah Torah. So it's very odd. if you want to say there's a chiv deraisa and it's based on the pshat of kol zchucha, so you would expect him to quote it. So the mitzvah is not only to come b'kol zchucha, certainly here. So, in Mishnah Torah, you have all the different studim. On one hand, he quotes a pasuk. On the other hand, he says chinuch l'chanchai b'mitzvahs, and to augment, to support, to buttress the idea that it's a drabanan is not only that he says mishum chinuch, is the fact that it doesn't quote the din of chatzoyim. Sefer mitzvahs, there's no need to quote din that's part of their mitzvahs, but Mishnah Torah he certainly should have quoted. So the mitzvah is not only to come there, but the olasriya. But l'cheira, the father, v'yakiv korban oila b'aliyosai, the father is makif for himself. What he's supposed to do with the children, not to makif for them a korban, but only to bring them that they should come. The cotton is not chayiv in riyah. The father is chayiv to bring the cotton as part of his mitzvah's riyah. You want to look at this more barichos, is not beyond what I want to talk about now. Look at the more chagig and avdal and the tesis. The Ram Shita is, again, that the Olas Riyah is a part of the mitzvah. And it's Mefush in Mishnah Torah. He says, Riyah hu amur b'Torah hu sheiroi ponov ba'azora b'yoim horishon shel chag v'yovi imoi korban oila. Umi, he should come to the Azora and bring with him, while he's coming, a korban oila. I'm skipping a little bit. Umi shebol Azora b'yoim rishon v'lo hevi oila lo dayoy shlo yosa mitzvah say. Oh, he's not kind of mitzvah say. The mitzvah say is not only to come, but to come with the oila. El she'ova al mitzvahs lo yisaseh. Shenemu v'lo yiroi ponai reikom. Rabbeinu Tam in Tesis, Reish Chagiga, is like the Rambam, that if you don't bring the korban, you're not mekayim the mitzvah. It's not just a lav. If you're not bring the korban, you're not mekayim the mitzvah. But Rashi has brought in Tesis in Chagiga, Dav Beis and Aleph, the Ramas Kol Chayim Beria, and the Yerushalmi, that the mitzvah havos korban is a mitzvah nifredes, ve'eno makeves, the mitzvah aliyah beregel. So it's a very interesting thing, but the Ram clearly says that the mitzvah is yiyelo she kol ben zocher sheyeloi shiyuchol leches beragov v'yakiv korban oila b'aliyosah. See, you have to think about this because you understand that the pasuk in the Olas Riyah is part of the lav lo yor ponei reikom in Sefer HaMitzvos. he talks about the Tzriya or the Shalmi Chagiga, but that the mitzvah Aseh requires the avos korban l'cheira is not mefurish in the pasuk. So the question is, how do you know it's such a thing? So the question is, can you do such a thing? But you see, can you have a lav, not the negation of not doing something? In other words, he came rekom, he wasn't makav a korban, without there being a mitzvah to be makav the korban. Can you say, don't come up without a korban, and there's no and there's a lav, you violate a lav, even though there's no obligation to bring the korban? Maybe the Ram holds the double portion that to have a lav of coming without doing something, that doing that is an aseh, and it's part of the mitzvah of Riyas Ponim. That l'cheira is what you have to say. It's very interesting. But now, the Riyas Ponim, see, lo yor polei rekom, you could have said with any korban, whatever he does. And for some reason, the Chazal, even in the Lav, you don't know exactly what it is. That it's an oila. And the Rambam and that's what he says over here, Mefurish, he says, V'yakriv korban oila ba'ali aseh. And the Rambam also, in Hilchos Chagiga, Perek Aleph Halacha Aleph, Umi shebo la'azorah, Hilchos Chagiga Aleph Aleph, Umi shebo la'azorah, b'yom rishon v'lo hevi oila, lo dayoy shelo asa mitzvah aseh, eloi va'al, lo yisaseh, shenem lo yor ponei rekom. In Yerushalmi, it's mefurish that there are two separate mitzvahs going on here. There's a mitzvah of Riyas Ponim, and there's a mitzvah of us korban Riyah. Yerushalmi Chagiga, Perek Aleph Halacha Aleph, Masnisen, Hakol Chayom Beriyah, Chutz V'Cheir Shoyta V'Kotten, the Gemara, Masnisen Beriyas Korban, aber Beriyas Ponim, Afilu Kotten Chayiv, Min Hado, Hakil Es Ha'omo Anoshim V'Anoshim V'Taf, V'Ein Kotten Godol, Mitaf. So it means that Ketanim Afilu kot mechayiv from hakel. Hakel is om anoshim vataf v'ein hat-cotton golden mitaf. So means that hakel is ria. It's very strange that if you mechuyev in hakel, you mechuyev in ria. But the double poshit, both the noshim and the ktanim are not chayiv in avos korban. Teis chagiga. You should look in this, but this one comes out. It's an amazing thing according to Yerushalmi that the oilas ria is a separate thing from the ria, and the ktanim are be'emes chayiv in the rias ponim, but they're part from the korban. Tosis discusses this. Quotes Yerushalmi in Beis Amud Beis, Divya Maskal Kol Chayovim, and the Turi Eben there, Divya Maskal Mishnah Chutz. So that's Vayis Boya. She says, וכבר קודם לנו, שלוש מצוות הסתיו ישראל ברגל, חגיגה, ria, ושמחה. And this is the mitzvah of ria. כבר הסבויה משפטי מצווה זו, ואצלוימה מצוות ria, מסכת חגיגה. והיא גם כן, אין אנושים חיובס בו. So it's a double portion. Because by Ri it says Kol Zchucha. So Noshim are Potter. And you don't need. It's also Mitzvah Seja as Mangrama. But the it says Kol Zchucha, you don't need any extra help here. Interesting is, Sadi going. In הפרק או 10 מצוות החגים והן הבאים, או ישנו שבהן עלייה לרגל 3 פעמים בכל שנה, אומרי 3 פעמים השנה יהיה כל זכוכו אל פני האדון השם. אלא שמצווה זו מוטלת על הגבוהים בלבד. Only on men. Okay, good. והרביעיס חי בצייס השונה, בצייס השביעיס, לעלויס לרגל, בתחילס השונה השמיניס, הגבוהים אנושים וטף. משום הקל הסעום, הוא אנושים ואנושים וטף. So there's a separate mitzvah ria of hakel, something like, we were talking about before, and it's only one time every 7 years. בתחילת השנה השמיניס, גבורים ואנושים וטף. In the mitzvah of ria, it's only gvorim. But in the mitzvah of ria, of hakel, is noshim vataf. Now, here is a very strange thing. Then he says, the Revi says this, Ushiyitein kol ish כפי יכולתוי לקודש, כפי שאומר, איש כמתנס יודו, because Hashem Elokecha אשר נוסן לך. So the give to Mikdash, the Kodesh, כפי מתנס יודו, כפי ברכת Hashem. See here, it's a very strange thing, because let's just go back to mathematics. It says he started off, Horishoina was Aliyah Regel, right? And then he says, Horavius is Hakel. So it means, Sholosh Poem Bashono Yeroya Kol Zechucha is 3 mitzvahs, because it's 3 times in the year. It's an amazing thing. It sounds very much like against Sherish Gimel, where you repeat a mitzvah many times, the same thing, you certainly count it as one. For example, the Ram says there that Shivasi, we call it Shivasi Me'achag of the Shivasi Pesach, you bring a Korban Musaf, the same exact thing, so it's counted as one. And here, Sholish Pon Bashono, he's counting as 3. This is the Afsadi going published in the Kittei Geniza. However, repute, he says Sholosh Regolim Tochoig, and Nashos he says Yechogu Sholosh. So he says, Rabbi Yochanan Perlau learns that the Kavona is for Shalom Chagiga. And it's a mitzvah achas l'chol ogom, so it's very confusing what the Absadi Goin's opinion is. But the Bahag is like the Rambam, that the Sholish mitzvahs kumvasei, there's Riyah, Chagiga, and Simchas Sholosh Regolim. So whatever it is, a very odd thing, just I'm pointing it out because of its oddity, really, that the Sholish Pom Bashon is 3 mitzvahs. So let's come on, what he does to say that. Next. Now, the mitzvah of Simcha. HaMitzvah ho'arba v'chamishim hi shetzivonu l'smoach b'regolim v'omer yis'aleh ושמחת בחגך. ושמחת בחגך. והיא המצווה השלישיס מן שורש המצווס הנוגס ברגל. So like the Bag, there's a mitzvah of Chagiga or Riyah Chagiga, Chagiga Riyah, and Simcha. Now, Okay. Next. Now, the Ram says, however, that there are two inyonim in this mitzvah. Or inyon rishon, hogomuz elov, b'tzivu azeh, hu shiakriv korban al kol ponim. Korban shlomim al kol ponim. So the mitzvah of Akrov is korban shlomim, and that's the first part of this mitzvah. And the word romuz is the same word that the Rambam has in mitzvah lamed daled, and we discussed there's a whole list. The word romuz, he doesn't use the word, because remez, according to the Rambam, is an asmachta, it's not real. And here, we're talking about the Ika mitzvah of Simcha, which is Hakrov Shlom, Korban Shlom. So romuz means a hira. So the better thing is posik. He says it should have been mitzvah shlishis for inyan horishon hamoire elov b'tzivu azeh ושמחת בחגך is sheyakriv korban shlomim al kol ponim. Well, Koponim means maybe that's in Eben Tibin and Ibn Eoiv. In Kapach, it's Behechach, or Likuva, or Bechol Oifan. In other words, he has to do so. There's no way out of it. V'elu Ashlomim and Neisofim, Al Shalmi Chagiga, V'heim Anikroim B'Talmud, Shalmi Simcha. The Shalmi Simcha are not the Chagiga, the Shalmi Chagiga. The Shalmi Simcha are this Hakrova to Mekayim the mitzvah. So it's very strange reading. Let's continue. Me'akrov shlomim elu yoimu noshim chayovus b'simcha. Va'akos v'zavach shlomim v'chalta sham. But the whole discussion over here in Rambam is a discussion about hakrova, not at all about achila at this point. The pasuk which he quotes in Dvarim of zavach shlomim v'chalta sham. The chais, maybe. But the whole discussion is Zehu Shiakiv Korban Shlomim Al Koponim or Behechach. Ve'ela Shlomim Neisofim Al Shalmei Chagiga, which is also Chiv Akrova. Ve'hema Nikoyim B'Talmud Shalmei Simcha. U'me'akrovis Shlomim Elu Yoimu Noshe Chayovis B'Simcha. So he's talking about Akrova. So we have to know. So it seems to be, but a priori you would have asked, you would have thought maybe the mitzvah is achilas shlomim or the tchilas kochim. Or maybe the mitzvah is only akrova, or maybe it's both. The question is, what are you supposed to do? How are you mekayim the mitzvah? It seems over here that the mitzvah is the akrova. At least the way the Rambam is presenting it here. In Mishnah Torah, in Hilchos Chagiga, in Perek Av Lochav, v'simcha amur b'regolim, he shiakiv shlomim, yes al Shalmei Chagiga. So it's also a priori looking at both of these things. The mitzvah is not krova. And that's it. Both in Mishnah Torah and in Sefer Mitzvahs. The problem is that the Rambam here in Sefer Mitzvahs and in Mishnah Torah is going to complicate the issue. Because here, later on in this mitzvah, the Rambam quotes Tanya, Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Omer, Bizman shebeis hamikdash kayim, ain't simcha el bebosa. Well, ain't simcha bebosa means you got to eat something. You have to eat something. Shenema v'zavachta shlomim v'chalta shom v'samachta. So that's what he says at the end of the mitzvah. Shom Amru Tanya Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira Omer Bizman shebeis hamikdash kayim ein simcha bebosa shenema v'zavachta shlomim v'chalta shom v'samachta. So the same pasuk which the Ram quotes over here at the beginning, I quoted that Ukva Boa Kosuv, he quoted the pasuk. Ukva Boa Kosuv, v'zavachta shlomim, v'chalta shom, v'samachta. He's quoting this pasuk as what? As the mitzvah akrova. And later on, he says, Ein simcha b'basa. So it means very clearly that it's both. Mishnah Torah in Hilchos Chagiga, in Peri Beis Halacha Yud, Yoitzin Yisrael Yidei Choyvas Shalmei Simcha b'nedom and the dovos of Ma'aseh Be'ema v'Kohanim b'chatos v'Osham u'b'Becho v'Shoik shemitzvah zu he lismoyach b'achilas basa lifnei Hashem. So again, at the beginning of Hilchos Chagiga, he's talking about Akrova, and in Peri Beis Halacha Yud, he's talking about Chila v'Ariyachloi. You get the impression is the mitzvah is the achila, not the akrova. And in the beginning, you get the impression the akrova, not the achila. This issue is kvadosh bei rabim or bרגלים, Sefer Avi Ezri, in Hilchos Chagiga, Perek Aleph Halacha Yud. The Asogas Chazon Ish, his letter is quoted at the end of Sefer Avi Ezri, Boch Frankel, the Tzlach. It's a very strange thing. The Ram, whatever you say, you're not going to get out of it. They take different sides of this, but I don't know if there's clarity over here. Okay, now. Let's now Noshim Chayovas, go back. Noshim Chayovas b'simcha. It's very clear that he says that Noshim are chayiv in this mitzvah of Chayil Yaakov Korban. And the Siyum mitzvah say of the Shishi mitzvahs Norges Bizman Aseh, the Rambam is moine mitzvah simcha. He doesn't count the Bechlal, the mitzvah Noshim Patuis man. In Pirush HaMishnah, in Kiddushin, Perek Aleph Mishnah Zayin, Halo Yadata, Shachilas Matzah, Leil Pesach, V'simcha b'moadim, V'hakel, Utfila, Umikla Megillah, V'nei Chanukah, V'nei Shabbos, V'kiddush Hayoim, Simcha Moadim. Kol elu mitzvahs aseh shazman gromo, v'chol elu mehen chiyuva lenoshim ki chiyuva lanoshim. Very clear over here. The noshim achayovos in Sefer mitzvahs, and also in Pirush Mishnayos. Also in Hilchos Avodah Zarah, Perek Yud Beis Halacha Gimel. V'chol mitzvah aseh shehi mizman lizman. Ve'ena tedira noshim patuis chutz mikiddush hayoim ve'achilas matzah b'leilei pesach ve'achilas pesach shchitosai ve'hakel ve'simcha shanoshim chayoves bo. Period. Also in Hilchos Chagiga in Ram Mishnah Torah v'simcha amur b'regolim he Sheyakriv Shlomim Yesar Shalmi Chagiga. V'Elohem Anikoim Shalmi Simcha. Shalmi Simchas Chagiga. Shene'ema v'zavachta Shlomim v'achalta Shalmi v'samach l'fnei Hashem echom noshim chayovois b'mitzvah zo. Again, the same exact thing. Lechem Mishnah talks about this. The Aben Ozel, Hilchos Ma'aser Korbanos, Perek Yudal Halacha Yudaled. The Gemara Rosh Hashanah on Vav Mebeis, there's a machlokes Abai and Rabbi Zera im Isha Chayeves b'Korban Simcha. The Ram seems to say that they are chayiv. Okay. L'cheira will see as time goes on that there's two inyanim, and in this mitzvah, as Islam says, "V'koilel bi'omroi ושמחת בחגך." מה שאומרו גם כן, שמח בכל מיני שמחה. מזה לאכול בשר ביום טובים, ולשתיית יין, וללבוש בגדים חדשים, ולחלק פירוס, ומיני מסיקה לקטנה ולנשים. So we have to deal, and this is there's just an issue which you have to know. Are noshim chayovis only in korban, or they're also chayiv in dvorim aruim lehen? And we'll see. Let's start with this, okay? The Ravid in Perek Aleph of Chagiga, Halacha Aleph, where he diva maska v'nosher chayovis b'mitzvah zo om avrom loy b'korban ela b'simcha shetismach im ba'alo Shetali imoy v'hu yisamech oisa. Yismach yisamech oisa. So it means Noshim are potter from Korban Shalmich Simcha, but the Chayavos in Dvorim Arim Lahem. So the Shagasai points out in Samach Vav that in this machlekes, the question according to Abaye is of the opinion Isha Ba'ala Mesamcha. And the Ravid Pasi is like not like Abaye, like Abzera. The Ram himself here is not clear, and Mitzvah will talk about it, because he says, it's mashim, that's he do. So maybe according to Ram, just the opposite. The Noshim Achayovos in the mitzvah of Simchas, of Shalmei Simcha, and not in Dvorim Wheelhands. It's very strange. Okay, next. Now, now here's a very big problem. We quoted this pasuk, v'zavachta shlomim v'chalta shom v'samachta lifnei Hashem elokecha. Or lifnei Hashem. Well, yeah, okay, say the question is different. Kisvayad, not negate us. For Aboa Kosov, v'zavachta shlomim v'chalta shom lifnei Hashem elokecha. This pasuk, there's a tzorchin gadol over here. This pasuk is a Rasha, what was said by the Akomas Avonim. When they went over the Alden River, and they built a boma la'akiv aleha. And this is the pasuk. V'hoye bi'ovechem es hayarden tokimu es ho'avonim o'ele asher onochi mitzave eschem hayoim ba'ar evo v'sareto oisom besid. So we're talking about going over the river and setting up the avonim. Okay. Bahar Evo, we're talking about Har Evo and going up. Ubonisa Shom, Mizbeach Lashem Elokecho, Mizbach Avonim, Loisonef Oleim Barzel, Avonim Shlemus Tivles Mizbach Hashem Elokecho, Va'alisa Olov, Oilois Lashem Elokecho. Then it says, V'zovachta Shlomim, V'yochalta Shom. We're talking about the Mizbeach of Har Evo, of the Hakomas Avonim, which has nothing to do with this mitzvah, and it's a Rasha. V'samach l'vnei Hashem Elokecha. V'chosafta Avonim, it's called Divrei HaTorah Azois Baye Heitev. Dvorim Chav Zayin, Posik Dalet Suches. The Gemara Psochim, however, quotes this pasuk at least twice for the mitzvah simcha. Rabbi Yehuda B'Seir Kuf Tesaman Aleph. Yehuda B'Seir Oimer B'Zman Shebeis Hamikdash Kayim Ein Simcha B'Bosa Shnema V'Zovachta Shlomi V'Achalta Shom V'Samachta. This is the pasuk of Rasha. Psochim Kuf Tesaman Aleph. And then Another Gemara, an ayin am beis in Pesachim. Omer Ula, Omer Rebbe Shlomim sheshachton me'erev yontif, eino yotze bohen, lo mishum simcha, v'lo mishum chagiga. Mishum simcha dichsiv, v'zovachta, v'samachta, be'inan zvicha b'shas simcha. Ayin am beis. The Rambam quotes in Mishnah Torah and here this memory of Yehuda B'Seir on Kuf Tes and Pesachim. And these two places, Tosis asked the Kasha, the Pasuk was said by Komas Avodim Shavas Hayardin. Tosis answers that you learn from how Evo Zvicha B'Shas Simcha. And that's you learn from this pasuk. And it's very strange. And but the Ram doesn't even quote this thing needs Zvicha B'Shas Simcha. The Rambam in Perek Beis of Hilchos Chagiga Halacha Tes Paskins, there you yotzin be if you with Erev Yontif. So Ben Beseira the Hoche also is the Hoche Behediksiv v'zavachta shlomim v'samachta. There ain't simcha el b'basa. And he says the answer to this question, the Hoche Behediksiv v'zavachta shlomim v'samachta. That you can learn from the pasuk and how Abel Tosis learns. And so is the Rambam that the mitzvah is of simcha is to walk over shlomim. And the Rambam Perek Aleph Vilchos Chagiga Loch Aleph. Simcha hamur b'regolim hu shiakim shlomim yesa al shalmi chagiga ve'ela nikolim shalmi simcha shneim v'zavachta shlomim. How do you do this? So what you have to say, and a very strange thing, and it's a Roshah, and it was only said Lagabe Harebo, nothing to do with Mitzvah Simchas Yontif. But the amazing thing is that this is not only an isolated question on the Gemara and the Gemara in two places, and the Rambam, Tezes, but the problem is in other Gemaras, because being a Mizbeach, where it says Umanisa Shom Mizbeach Hashem Elokech Mizbach Avonim like Tonif Aleim Son of Aleim Barzel Avonim Shleimois Tivnes Mizbach Hashem Elokecha. The Gemara Avodah Zorah and then Beis my Beis Heichi Navid Nit Berinu Avonim Shleimois Lachmona Nan Serinu like Son of Aleim Barzel Lachmona. So the Gemara says that these Labim are Noig L'Deis. Which is an amazing thing. Zvochim, Samachal Mebeis, Omavuna, Omaraz, Bech, Shel Shiur, Shel Avodim Hoya, the Sani, Rabbi Lezer ben Yaakov, Matam Loima, Avonim, Shlosh Pomim, Echel Shiur, Echel Gilo Vegim, Echel Beis Alamim. In Mizrach Avonim, one of them is from this parsha. And it's twice. And Hilchos Beis Bechira, Kol Ever Shenifkamo, Kedei Shetachba Bo Tziporim, Kesakin, Atziporim Besakin, Kesakin Shel Shchita, Harizu Psula, Lekevesh Mizbeach Shneim Avonim Shleimos Tivnes Beis Hashem Elokecha. So you see an amazing thing that you can learn mitzvahs l'deiros, even with parsha, which is mefurish, there was a Rosh, which is an amazing thing. But that's what it is. I don't know what to say. So that's Locha Mitzvah Hashem will pick up next week.